Hello, welcome to this video. I'm going to go over trigonometry. I'm going to explain how to use sin, cos and tan using a method called SOHCAHTOA. But before we dive in, let me introduce myself. I'm Sally, I'm a fully qualified teacher and I'm the founder of Learn Page by Page. As you can hear from my accent, I am from the UK, but I also teach US students, so I will cover both curriculums. I have worked in schools, but for the last 10 years I've specialised teaching one-to-one, and I also coach homeschool parents. I hope you find the lesson really helpful, so thank you so much for stopping by. If there's any videos in the future you would like, then do pop a comment below and hit subscribe, because that will really help the channel, and then I'll be able to notify you of any future videos. Now let's dive into today's lesson. Firstly, it only works in right angle triangles, so it's very similar to Pythagoras' theorem, but with Pythagoras' theorem that only uses side measurements. Trigonometry will use angles as well as sides. Now, I've mentioned Pythagoras' theorem because you do need to know that, especially for if you're doing GCSE, so I've linked that video at the end. What trigonometry uses is ratios. The ratios are sin, cos and tan. You don't need to know the details of those, as it's all pre-programmed in a scientific calculator. But what you do need to know are the names of the sides. So let's take a look at this triangle here. And this is a right angle triangle because you've got that little square in the corner. Remember, if there's not a square in the corner or an indication that that is 90 degrees, you can't assume it's a right angle triangle. Then I've labelled the triangle. Firstly, you'll see that there is the angle here marked X. So that's the angle that we're dealing with. And then we've labelled the sides. The side directly opposite the angle is always called the opposite. So that is opposite side to that angle. The longest side, the hypotenuse, this one is always opposite the right angle. And the other thing with the hypotenuse is, if you imagine this triangle was once a square or a rectangle, and the hypotenuse is the side which diagonally cuts the square into two. So it will always be the longest side in your question. Bear that in mind because that is relevant. The last name of the side that we need to know is what's called the adjacent, and that is the one that's actually adjacent to the angle. Remember, the word adjacent means next to. So this side is next to this angle. Now let's connect those to SOHCAHTOA, and let's write out SOHCAHTOA, and it's SOHCAH and TOA. And let's break down what it actually stands for. So the S, C and T each stand for sin, cos and tan. And if you look at your scientific calculator, you'll notice you have sin, cos, tan there. They're the pre-programmed ratios that are already in your calculator. Years ago, you used to have charts or books, I believe. It was before my time. And then if you look just above the sin and cos and tan, there's sin to the -1, and that's the inverse. And sometimes you'll need to use that. And all you do to access that, you see it's in yellow, you're going to have to press shift, which is up here in the top left. So press shift and then you'll get sin to the -1. We'll go into how to input that into calculator in a minute. Let's go back to learning about SOHCAHTOA. The first one, so, the S is for sin, and that is your sign of the angle, and the angle we're talking about here is X. So you write sin X equals, then the O and the H, where the O stands for the opposite and the H for the hypotenuse. They will be the measurements for the sides, but for now we're just going to write OPP, first three letters of the opposite, divided by HYP. That's the first one. The second one, let's change our pen colour. You can see here, begins with C. That's cos. So this is cos, and again it's X, because the whole thing with trigonometry, it's all about where this angle is. So if this angle is here, the name of this side is the adjacent, where if the angle was here, this would be the adjacent. But for now, this is the opposite side because it's opposite that angle. So back to cos, and we have an A and an H. So the A stands for adjacent and the H for the hypotenuse. So we write it as ADJ divided by HYP. And then the last one, TOA, stands for tan. Tan X equals O and A. O is for opposite, A is for adjacent. Opposite divided by ADJ. Now the best way to learn trigonometry is just practice questions. And let's start off with the first one. Okay, here we're being asked to find X to one decimal place. So the first thing you do is you label your triangle. Remember this was the hypotenuse? I just use the first three letters, HYP. Then let's have a look at our angle. Now our angle is here, therefore the side opposite the angle is always called the opposite. So that's your OPP. And then the side next to the angle, remember, is ADJ. That's your adjacent. Then write down SOHCAHTOA, and it was SOHCAHTOA. And then I want you to go back to the triangle and look at what they're asking you. They're asking for X. They want the measurement of this side, and we have an angle and we have this measurement of the hypotenuse. So which of the three sides do we not need? We don't really need the adjacent. What I do is I just put a faint line through that so I don't get confused. I don't need that when I'm trying to figure out which of the three formulas I'm going to use. So I want a formula that contains H for hypotenuse and O for opposite. That would be SOH, that would be sine. So I rewrite that, sine. Now I don't write X, I write 42 because it's all about the angle. So you write sine 42, you can put it in brackets if you want, equals, what do we have? We have opposite over hypotenuse. So the opposite was X over the hypotenuse, which is 12. Now we've just got a normal equation, so we're going to rearrange this until we get X on its own. Let's move the 12. Because it's being divided, we can multiply by 12. Multiply by 12. So multiply both sides by 12. And that's going to leave us sine or sin 42 multiplied by 12 equals X. So you're going to put that into your calculator. You have sin brackets 42, close the bracket, multiplied by 12 equals 8.02. And they want it to one decimal place. That's going to be 8.0. X equals 8.0. And then look at your triangle lastly. And if you get into the habit of this, because sometimes you can press the wrong button on the calculator. And what have you got? Well, you've got 8.0 X. That means that side measures 8.0. And is that logical? I think it is, because the hypotenuse is 12. So this side has to be shorter than the hypotenuse. And that's pretty good, 8.0. Now let's move on to another one. Here you're being asked to find Y. First thing, label your triangle. You notice the angle 58 degrees is up here. So that is going to be your opposite side. This one is always the hypotenuse. That just leaves this side next to the angle, which is the adjacent, ADJ. Then write out SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Go back to your triangle and look at what you don't need. So you don't need the opposite, and just put a faint line through it. Now we can just focus on what you want to use, and that is the hypotenuse and the adjacent. So you're looking for a formula that contains an H and an A, and the H and the A is this one, cos. Rewrite that out, cos, and the angle is 58, close the bracket, equals A and H stands for the adjacent over hypotenuse. And the adjacent is 17 divided by the hypotenuse, which we don't have. That's what we've got to find, and that is Y. Then you're going to rearrange this just like a normal equation. And the first thing you're going to do is move this Y. And the way we do that is we multiply both sides by Y. Remember, you can't multiply by 17. You can only multiply by the denominator. So this is a two-stage process. We've got to multiply by Y first, and that will look like this. Cos 58 multiplied by Y equals 17. And now we can divide by cos 58 to leave Y on its own. So we're going to divide by cos 58, both sides. And the reason you write it over here is you're letting your examiner know what you've done, just in case there's a mark for it or a credit. Divide by cos 58. And now we can rewrite that as y equals 17 divided by cos 58. Put that in our calculator. 17 divided by cos 58, close your bracket, come to the end, equals, and that's 32.08. So y equals, let's move that up, y equals 32.08. But as the question hasn't instructed us to what decimal place, then we've got to look at the measurements on the triangle, and they were to no decimal place, so I'm just going to round that to 32. Y equals 32, and it was millimetres. On to one more. Here we've got to find V, and if you notice, the right angled triangle is not in that nice upright position from the previous questions, but don't let this put you off. Especially higher GCSE questions, they're going to give you triangles in all different places. Could be in a graph, but it's all the same principles. First thing, we label our triangle. First of all, let's label our longest side, which is our hypotenuse, HYP. Some people just do H. You do whatever you're comfortable with. Then we've got the side which is next to the angle. This one here, that's our adjacent, ADJ, and this one here, that is the side that's opposite, remember, the angle, so OPP. Then write down SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Decide which one you'd like to use. Firstly, cross out the hypotenuse, as that's not relevant to the question. We're looking for the formula which contains the O and the A. O and the A, that's going to be tan. So tan of the angle, now the angle is 19 degrees, equals opposite is 42, and then the adjacent is V, so over V. And let's rearrange our equation. Multiplied by V, that gives us tan 19 times V, which equals 42, and then we're going to divide by tan 19. Both sides, remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other, and that's going to give us V equals 42 divided by tan 19. That in your scientific calculator, 42 divided by tan 19 equals 121.97. So V equals 121.97. And what is the question? Well, it hasn't asked us to find to a certain decimal place, and the measurement here was to no decimal places, so therefore we assume we should round that to no decimal places, so V will equal 122 meters. Now let's go on to another one. This one is slightly different. This time we're being asked to find the angle, so we're being asked to find X. We've been given the two side measurements, and this is why it can sometimes get confused with Pythagoras' theorem. But because you're being asked to find an angle, you know you've got to use trigonometry. Like before, label your triangle. HYP, ADJ, that's the adjacent. It's adjacent to the angle. OPP is the side that's opposite the angle. Then write down SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Look at your triangle, which measurement isn't relevant, the hypotenuse isn't relevant. So we're looking for a formula which is the opposite and the adjacent. So O and A, that's going to be tan. Then write out your formula. Tan, this time it is X, equals, opposite is 11.2 divided by 12.7. Now, it's always a good idea to have a guess of these kind of questions, because if you press the wrong buttons on the calculator, you need to be expecting an answer. And what we're looking for here is an angle. So if you roughly predict what the angle is going to be, and if that's 90 degrees, this is going to be anywhere between, say, 30 and 50 degrees. So that's what we're looking for. Let's go and put this in the calculator. So we have 11.2 divided by 12.7. So we go shift tan this time. Use the fraction button. 11.2 divided by 12.7. Come up and close your bracket. And then your answer, 41.4. That's what we expected. Tan X equals 41.4. And as it's degrees, we usually don't have any decimal places with degrees. That will equal 41. degrees. You write it as that. You write x equals 41 degrees. And then last one, a little bit different, but exactly the same principles. Look for your right angled triangle, which you can see that's there. We're being asked to find x, which is this angle here. And what do we have? Well, we have an isosceles triangle. That means that length is equal to that length, and this angle is the same as that angle. It's been bisected down the middle, that's the height. And so this angle we can assume is exactly the same as that angle. And so this side will be the same as this side. We might as well just stick to this one to begin with. Now let's go ahead and label the triangle. So this is our hypotenuse, HYP. This is the angle we're dealing with, which is the same as that. So we have 14 as the height. That's going to be the adjacent, ADJ. And along the bottom here, we have the opposite, because that's opposite that angle. Then write out SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Look at your triangle and decide what's not relevant, and that would be the opposite. So we're looking for a formula with A and H in it, and A and H would be cos. Write that out. Cos, we don't know the angle, it's X, equals the adjacent is 14 divided by the hypotenuse, which is 18, and that equals, put that into your calculator. So we have the inverse of cos, 14 divided by 18, which equals 38.94. X equals 38.94. And angles are usually to no decimal places, so X equals 39 degrees. There we are. I hope that all helps. I would say watch this video through again and again, perhaps pausing at each question and try and do them yourself. I will get some more videos up soon, so do hit the subscribe to be notified. And this video here is the one I promised you on Pythagoras theorem, which goes hand in hand with trigonometry. So that one's definitely worth a watch. Thank you ever so much again. Take care and bye bye.